I'm Jane Farnham from Great British Speakers, and I'm here today chatting with the brilliant environment and sustainability speaker, Trewin Restorick. Now, good morning to you. Oh, it's good afternoon, actually, but thank you for joining us, Trewin. That's really lovely of you to give us some time today.
Absolute pleasure and lovely to meet you, Jane.
So by way of introduction, you've got a real track record in creating and developing organisations for sustainable change as the founder of not just one, but 3 award-winning sustainability enterprises. So thank you for joining us. And before we get into the speaking, let's talk to us a little bit about your background and where you came from in terms of how you got into the environment and sustainability cause.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, well, you can probably tell by the grey hairs, I've been knocking around this space way too long. I actually started with limited interest in the environment, but I was working down in the city where my parents lived in Plymouth, and they laid off loads of people in the dockyard, and one of my jobs was to find new work for them. And actually, a lot of the jobs that they found were renovating old things and using the skills they had to create new things from old. And nowadays it would be called a green job. And I suddenly got really interested in the fact that actually, you know, we throw away a lot of resources that could be used. So that led me to join the campaign group at Friends of the Earth, where I ran the recycling campaigns. I introduced one of the first curbside collections of recycling when I was there. And then I just felt Friends of the Earth was way too campaigny for me, always kicking at the door. And I thought, well, the door's actually open now and we can work constructively with businesses a lot more. So the 3 organisations I've set up since then have all been about working really constructively in partnership with businesses, trying to help them communicate their environmental messages better, trying to persuade people about the ease and the importance of changing their behaviour. And as I've gone over time, obviously those things have changed and refined. But I do like setting stuff up. I guess that either says I'm not very good at running things, or I'm sort of a bit of a sort of entrepreneurial spirit, one of the two. But yeah, that's really been my background.
So I love the idea of you being so entrepreneurial, but you're talking about then bringing together the corporate world and individuals, of course, that working within those corporations, but at a local level. Is that right to say?
Yeah, so I think the last organisation I set up was called Hubbub, and I basically got to the point of looking at all the science around climate change and nature loss, and it really scared me. And then I looked at what was happening sort of in the wider world, and I thought, why aren't people really concerned about this? Why aren't they really acting on it? Because it seemed like there was stark warnings and little action. And what I did was I looked at the way that a lot of the environmental groups communicated with the public. And frankly, I thought, I'm not surprised. It was all very doom and gloom. It was really hard to understand. They were using words that weren't in the common language. So I thought, well, how can we get the message across in a different way? So I wanted to talk about things that I think people are passionate about. So the food they eat, the clothes they wear, the homes they live in, their neighborhoods. I wanted to work in partnership with big corporates because they have the reach and the ability. I wanted to do lots of experiments at a local level to find out what works and learn fast, sort of fail fast, fail cheap. And then I wanted to be totally honest about what was working and was not working. And that was the essence of Hubbub, which was the charity I created from scratch, which sort of grown quite quickly. And I think it starts at a local level and it is community-based. But obviously, given the scale of the challenge we have, it has to go broader and quicker. So you need to find something that you can test locally, but that can expand rapidly, nationally or internationally.
So tell me, what's the best experiment that you've done that's worked quickly, easily, and brought about the best results that you could roll out? Give me an example of that.
Yes, so there's a couple that spring to mind, if I'm allowed to. The first one was something called a community fridge. So we found in Spain that a lot of businesses were throwing away perishable food, healthy food like fruit, veg, bakery products at the end of the day because they needed to be kept somewhere frozen and chilled, and there was no access. So they set up a community fridge, which is basically big fridges and freezers in a public space, and the businesses put their stuff in there, and then anybody can take it. So we took that idea to a small town in Derbyshire called Swadlincote, And they were just like, oh, people are going to abuse the system, it's going to get wrecked, vandalized, etc., etc. And it worked really well. So anybody could take the food. And actually people, if they had a glut of vegetables, were taking those to the fridge. And then somebody said, oh, well, that's all very well because it's, quite a nice little town. What happens if you try it in the heart of London? So we went to sort of East London and Southeast London and did it there, and it worked even better. And
Wow.
from those two experiments, they're now, I think, over 350 community fridges taking fruit, vegetables, healthy food, bakery products that would have been wasted. And then anybody in the community can take them. So it cuts food waste, but also it's helping people, really struggling on tight budgets at the moment. So it has a social impact and an environmental impact. And unlike food banks, it deals with perishable food and anybody can take it. So you don't have to prove you need it.
Right.
But actually the people who do go to the fridges are actually those who need it most.
That's a great
And then
idea.
the other quick example, very different, but a lot of the things I've done is about using something called behavior change techniques. So how do you persuade people to change their habits? And one great example is we went to a street in London to look at litter. Really, litter really irritates people. Found it was cigarette butts. So it was mostly the littered item. Found it was mainly drunk blokes dropping cigarette butts on the floor. Cigarette butts contain plastic, so it's really bad environmentally. So the challenge was, how do you stop a drunk bloke sticking their cigarette butt on the floor? We didn't think a little sort of sticker would quite cut it. So we created a voting bin and we asked, who's the best football player in the world? Is it Ronaldo or Messi? Vote with your cigarette butt. And we stacked the bin so it looked like Ronaldo was winning. At the time, Messi was the best player. And I think we got 76,000 Facebook likes in the first days. Or what do smokers know about football? Look, how can they say this? And then I started to get loads of inquiries from people saying, can we have this bin? Which was complicated because I only had one. But basically it created a social enterprise and sold the bin. They sell globally. And everywhere they go, they cut cigarette littering. So that's a way of using a nudge technique to get people to change their environmental behaviour.
We know all about nudges over the last 3 years. Now, tell us a bit about the breadth of some of the campaigns, because I know that you've been involved in some big brands, because I know we've been talking, those ideas were kind of at a local level. But tell us about some of the bigger brands that you've been involved in.
Yeah, perhaps a couple of them. One was Starbucks. So Starbucks were looking at ways they could encourage people to use reusable cups more. And they already offered a 25% discount if you bought any reusable cup, but it was only had a limited take up. So they decided to put a 5p charge on disposable cups, and it instantly doubled the amount of people using reusable cups. We ran it in 30 odd of their restaurants in London to see whether it would work. Didn't hit their sales at all. And then what was interesting was that they then rolled it out across all of their UK branches, and all of those 5p's went to Hubbub, and then Hubbub uses that money to invest in greener initiatives. So, more recycling facilities for coffee cups, experiments about how you can promote a more circular and economy. It's generated millions and millions of pounds, and it's funded lots of initiatives. So that's one way that we work with a company. They put an extra charge on something which was less good environmentally, didn't do them any harm in sales, boosted their reputation, and generated funds to support some of their sustainability initiatives. And the other one quickly is Virgin Media O2. So particularly during COVID, we discovered there are many, many people had no access to the internet. So, during COVID, they were really isolated from doctors, friends, couldn't get jobs. But we also know that there are thousands and thousands, if not more, of smartphones sitting in people's desks or around the office. And so what we did was we set up an initiative with Virgin Media O2 called Community Calling, where we collected all of those phones, we cleaned them physically and digitally, and then they're handed out via local charities to people in different areas who need access to the internet. But they also get free data alongside it, and they also get some support in how to actually use the phone. So again, I really like schemes which have a social benefit, help those people who are isolated, but also have a big environmental benefit, because electronic waste is one of the biggest growths of waste in the UK. So anything you can do to cut e-waste and to make the most use of those electronic products is really important.
I love the fact that it then goes back in. It's almost like it's turning the earth, isn't it? You know, when you're ploughing a field, it's almost bringing things back into use. It's excellent. So you've now moved along. You created Sizzle. So tell me
Yeah.
about Sizzle, the aims and objectives there.
Yeah, so unsurprisingly, it's still in that sort of environmental space. I mean, Hubbub was doing really well. It's very strange to leave an organization you've set up. I've done it a couple of times now, but I guess it got to the size where I wasn't really utilizing my skills in the way that I thought was best. You know, it was more about running the organization than sort of the creativity side. And also, as I've gone on in life, I've realized that, you know, behavior change campaigns like the ones I mentioned can reach a certain amount of the population. But if you want to get real scale, you've got to change the way that systems and products are provided. So basically, you've got to make it as easy as possible for people to do the right thing, so that there's, you know, that's the choice because they want to do it rather than being encouraged or forced to do it for environmental reasons. So what Sizzle is about is like, and it's really difficult, is how do you change the way that systems and services are provided? And I think the way you do that is you bring organizations together to talk to each other who don't normally talk to each other. You get them to rethink what they're doing. And through that process, you find new answers and new solutions. And that has to involve legislators. It's got to involve producers, customers, obviously, but also the waste industry as well. So you need all of those players to rethink those systems.
So if I were a corporate organisation, how can my organisation benefit from being involved then with Sizzle?
So I think that lots of organisations have realised, you know, as they understand the scale of the environmental crisis they face, that change is needed, and they also know that they can't do it on their own. You know, some of these things are quite big issues. Then, you know, even the biggest companies can't deal with them on their own, so they need to collaborate across a whole load of different sectors and different platforms. And what I found already is that those businesses that know they need a different answer, which involves people they don't normally talk to, they need like an independent broker or a catalyst or somebody who can come along and help bring together that partnership from an independent viewpoint. And that's where sort of I've been helping businesses.
So in terms of your speaking then, tell us about what sort of companies call you in to help, and what are your key takeaways from a talk?
Yeah, they're always a bit scary because they always have things like inspiration or break inertia. It's like, ah! I think a lot of businesses, what I'm seeing is that a lot of businesses are setting headline targets. You know, somebody at the senior level said, oh, we're going to cut carbon emissions by 40% by dirty dirt, or, you know, we're going to cut plastic use. You know, they realize they need to make a bold ambition, but companies also realize if they don't do it, then they can be held accountable for greenwashing. And then they've also realised that, you know, it's all very well setting a target, but how do you
Sorry, Trewin, what's
so
greenwashing?
yeah, greenwashing is where a business makes a claim, usually about one small part of the business. You know, it might shine the spotlight on one very small thing it does and say, look, aren't we brilliant? But then ignore perhaps a lot of other things which might not be so good, or they exaggerate the benefits of that one particular issue. So, you know, it could be the fashion industry or the aviation industry claiming to be sustainable and green, but actually if you put the spotlight on it, it doesn't work. And people now, like the Advertising Standards Authority, are increasingly looking at that, and there's been a growing number of cases where they've called companies out for greenwashing. And now what's quite interesting, particularly across Europe, is there's legislation coming into place. So companies have to be really careful about what they're saying to sort of verify the claims they're making. And the public are getting skeptical, and actually they're getting more informed. So the level of scrutiny on a business around greenwashing is growing significantly.
Yeah. And so when you go into talk, do they tend to get you to give them company-wide initiatives amongst the colleagues, or is it more sort of awareness?
It tends to be around, first of all, why has this suddenly become important? Because for many people in the business, it's like, well, where's this come from? So, and, you know, the science around climate and plastics It's all quite complicated. It's couched in really unhelpful terms. So just having somebody in, I've been trained by Al Gore about talking about climate. So I can get the message about why this is important. Why is it suddenly on your agenda? And then I can give really practical examples about how do you go about addressing it? What's the strategy? How do you motivate your employees? How do you engage with your customers, which is another really big issue? And how can you turn that target into something which is of a benefit to the company in terms of the way it does business?
So obviously, trying to increase awareness, but also make a positive change in a business perspective as well.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would say that we should be doing that you don't see people doing enough around, I suppose, around the office, around every day of your life, rather than just, because I know that at home I do, I recycle and I don't waste food, and I try and do my best on all those fronts. But is there something that we're inherently missing, or something we can be doing in the office that we may not tend to do naturally?
Yeah, well, I think in the home space, you touched on food, but food is so important. If food waste was a country, it would be the third biggest carbon polluter globally. So food waste is really important, but diet is really important. And having, not going vegan necessarily, but having a much more balanced diet with less meat and less dairy is, that's something you could immediately do. I think just running your business and your home as efficiently as possible sounds boring, but energy efficiency, water efficiency, that, the greenest energy is the one you don't use. And I don't think businesses have really taken that on as much as they can, even with the price of energy as it is. So like being super efficient business is very important. And I think there are growing concerns around things like water availability. We're seeing already in Spain massive pressures on water supply. It's, we've avoided sort of water constraints very narrowly in the last few years, and just the trends in the way the amount of water we use and the amount of water availability is going to hit businesses soon. So they need to sort of be ahead of the game and get prepared for that. And then I think the other theme, and you sort of touched on it a bit in terms of like your revolving earth, is more focus on the circular economy. So at the moment, the way the economy tends to work is very linear. It's like we produce something, we use it, we throw it away, it's lost.
Throwaway
That's really
society is
important. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you need a circular economy. You need to be able to bring everything back into the system. And that means you've got to think about it when you design it, or, all the way through. You can't just do it at the end. You have to have a mindset at the beginning that says, okay, I'm going to create this so that it can be kept within the system. And businesses aren't very good at that. So it's actually changing that mindset.
Create the latest. A lot of companies can be guilty of trying to create the latest fad, getting ahead of the game. They're not really thinking about at conceptual stage, what are we going to do? What's the outcome of this, and what's the waste of this? And it is a very throwaway culture that we live in, and I think a lot of it is common sense. It's things that my dad was telling me when I was a kid. You don't waste food. You don't. You fix things rather than throw it away. And we just become so commercialized as a world. Everything's all about new, and everything becomes more affordable. And we just become our own worst enemies, really, on that front.
Yeah, I mean, convenience is king at the moment, and that leads to so many things happening. But you know what? You can't keep using resources at the speed we are. I mean, that's clear. And what we're starting to see with the current economic crunch, which is different from many others, is it's actually about resource use. So, the cost of resources themselves are going up. So very soon it's going to hit businesses that, they've got to bring their supply chain closer to home. They need to really think about the resilience of their supply chain. They need to make sure this is as efficient as possible. They might even need to start to take control of their own supply chain so that they have like a license to operate in the future. Because I think these pressures it's funny, people keep saying, oh, this is a one-off, it's, when the war ends, etc., etc., it's going to go back. I'm not sure it is going to go back. I think this could be the new norm, and businesses need to think about that.
I think so. And I think once you're in charge of and in control of your supply chain, then it makes you a far healthier business, because you call the shots. You're not
Exactly.
at the, at the whim of somebody else putting up their prices. Well, Trewin, it's been an absolute delight chatting to you and learning all things sustainability. So thank you very much for your time today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Lovely talking to you, Jane.
Been really lovely. And if you'd like to book Trewin to come to talk to your employees and your staff about the environment, sustainability, and things that we can do to help ourselves and help your business, then simply contact myself or Steve on 01753 439 289. That's on the phone, or email bookings@greatbritishtalent.com. Great British Speakers. Thank you.